The SAR H Nightingale moved through the void with the dogged, unglamorous persistence of a long-haul ambulance. It was not a vessel of discovery or conquest. Its hull was scarred with the scorch marks of atmospheric entries and pocked by micro-collisions, each blemish a souvenir from a past tragedy. Inside, the air was sterile, smelling faintly of ozone and antiseptic, and the only sound was the low, steady hum of the life support systems. Lena Corvin, mission commander, watched the star-dusted blackness slide past the main view screen. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her face, though etched with the fine lines of fatigue that came from a decade in the Humanitas Rescue Corps, was anchored by eyes that were calm, perceptive, and missed nothing. She sipped her lukewarm coffee, the bitter taste a familiar companion in the long, quiet hours between calls. "Anything?" she asked, her voice quiet but carrying the effortless authority of command. Samir Jain swiveled in his chair at the systems console, his fingers drumming a nervous, complex rhythm on his armrest. He was a young man, barely 25, with a mind that moved at the speed of light and a disposition that suggested he expected a catastrophic failure at any second. "Negative, Commander. Just the usual subspace chatter. A freighter out of Kepler 186F is complaining about the price of refined helium again. It's riveting stuff." From the engineering alcove in the back of the small bridge came a low grunt. It was the full extent of Griswold Grizz Bear's contribution to most conversations. Grizz was a mountain of a man, with hands calloused, from a lifetime of wrestling with stubborn machinery and a beard that seemed to contain its own gravitational field. He trusted torque wrenches and plasma cutters. People, in his experience, were far less reliable. This was her team. The sharp, anxious brain, the silent, steady hands, and her, the conscience that held it all together. They were three ordinary people tasked with an extraordinary job, plucking life from the jaws of the galaxy's endless, impartial cruelty. As if on cue, a soft, insistent chime echoed through the bridge. A new icon flashed on Samir's console. "We've got a signal," he announced, his nervous energy instantly replaced by sharp focus. He manipulated the holographic display, a string of data coalescing into view. "Automated distress beacon, standard pan-species frequency. No ship ID, no registry, no voice log." Lena moved to stand behind him, her eyes scanning the data. "Source?" "That's the problem," Samir said, zooming in on a star chart. A swirling, ominous cloud of dark matter and stellar dust dominated the sector. "It's coming from deep inside the Veil of Whispers." Grizz's grunting took on a distinctly negative tone. The Veil was infamous. It wasn't just a nebula, it was a graveyard of ships. Its chaotic magnetic fields and sensor-baffling dust clouds were lethal to even experienced navigators. "It's a weak signal," Samir continued, running diagnostics. "Could be an echo, could be an equipment malfunction caused by the nebula itself, or it could be a ship that broke its back on a rogue asteroid." The options were all plausible. Most ships gave the Veil a wide berth. Only the desperate or the foolish ever entered. But the rules of the Humanitas Rescue Corps were etched in Lena's soul, a mantra she had sworn an oath to uphold. The first, and most important, was immutable. "We answer the call. All of them." "What's the estimated time to the beacon's origin?" she asked. "If we push the drive and I can find a stable path, 6 hours, Samir replied. "But the nebula will. Play hell with the navigational sensors, it's risky." "Everything we do is risky," Lena said, her voice leaving no room for argument. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Plot the safest course you can, Samir. Grizz, I want a full diagnostic on the external grapples and the primary cutting laser. If there's a wreck in there, I want to be ready to open it like a can." Grizz gave a short, affirmative grunt and disappeared into the engineering bay. Samir's fingers flew across his console, the nervous drumming replaced by the quiet, purposeful tap of a professional doing his job. Lena returned to the view screen, watching as the serene starfield was slowly consumed by the churning, shadowy maw of the Veil of Whispers. It was just another call, another potential tragedy, another day at the office. 6 hours of gut-wrenching navigation had left the crew drained. The Nightingale had bucked and groaned through gravimetric shears, its sensors screaming phantom warnings. as Samir coaxed it through a channel of relatively stable space. When they finally dropped out of Highburn, the sight that greeted them stole the air from their lungs. It was not a single crashed freighter. It was a fleet. Before them lay a scene of breathtaking, horrific beauty. Suspended in the ethereal violet glow of the nebula were the remains of at least a dozen ships. But these were not the utilitarian metal boxes of human design. These vessels were grown, not built, elegant crystalline structures that soared in, graceful, impossible curves like shards of frozen music. Now they were shattered. Great. Gaping wounds had been torn in their sides, and the surrounding space was a glittering, deadly cloud of crystalline dust and frozen atmosphere. "My God," Samir whispered, his face pale. "What happened here?" "This wasn't an accident." Grizz rumbled from the doorway, his eyes narrowed. "This was an execution." He was right. The damage was too precise, too uniform. This was the work of overwhelming force. "Life signs," Lena commanded, her mind snapping back into professional mode, pushing past the horror. "Deploying the drones," Samir said, his hands flying across the console. A series of small, swift search and rescue drones detached from the Nightingale's hull, fanning out into the debris field. Their purpose was to find survivors, their sensors tuned to the faintest flicker of life, organic or synthetic. A map of the graveyard began to form on the holotable. Most of the wrecks were cold, silent tombs. But then, a few faint pings appeared. One here, another there. A small cluster in what looked like the command section of the largest, most ornate vessel. Survivors. Fragile, flickering sparks in a vast, cold darkness. A surge of adrenaline shot through Lena. This was it. This was the moment they existed for. Then a new set of contacts appeared on the tactical display. 4 of them. They were large, brutal-looking ships, all sharp angles and ugly, functional plating. They moved with a slow, methodical purpose, using massive magnetic claws and crackling energy beams to harvest the wreckage. "I'm picking up guild markings," Samir said, his voice tight with dread. "The Render Collective." Lena's blood ran cold. The Renders weren't pirates in the traditional sense. They were a ruthlessly efficient salvaging guild that operated in the gray zones of galactic law. They saw battlefields not as tragedies, but as business opportunities. Their motto was simple: everything has value. As they watched, one of the Render ships latched onto a shattered section of a Simoran vessel. Samir's display showed a faint life sign still pulsing within that very piece. "They're not just taking the wreckage," Lena breathed in horror. Before their eyes, the Render ship's primary beam intensified, the crackling energy coalescing into a brilliant white-hot point. The beam lanced out and struck the crystalline fragment. For a moment, it glowed with impossible intensity, and then it simply vaporized, reduced to superheated gas. The faint life sign on Samir's display vanished. He let out a choked sound. Grizz cursed, a rare and violent outburst. Lena felt a cold, hard knot of fury form in her stomach. The Renders weren't just salvaging metal. They were melting down the lifeboats with the survivors still inside. To them, the crystalline bodies of the Simorans were just another resource to be rendered, another asset to be claimed. They were not just salvagers. They were vultures, picking a graveyard clean, and they were the only other living souls in this entire desolate system. A harsh, static-laced hail burst from the comm speaker. "Unidentified vessel, you are trespassing on a claimed salvage operation. This is Foreman Thrax of the Render Collective. State your purpose or depart the sector immediately. We do not share." The voice was as coarse and ugly as the ship it came from. Lena stepped up to the comms panel, her face a neutral mask. "Render vessel, this is the Humanitas Rescue Corps Cutter Nightingale. We are responding to a distress beacon. Our mission is non-combatant." There was a pause, followed by a grating, humorless laugh. "Rescue? Look around, human. There's nothing here to rescue, just scrap. This is our claim now. Veer off before you get caught in the machinery." The channel went dead. The message was clear. We are in charge. You are gnats. Get lost. Samir swiveled in his chair, his eyes wide with fear. Commander, we have to go. We have to. We are a rescue ship. Our prime directive in a hostile situation is to observe, report, and withdraw. They're armed. We have a cutting torch and a medical bay. They're killing them, Samir, Lena said, her voice dangerously quiet. They are murdering survivors for scrap. And we can't stop them. Samir's voice rose, cracking with panic. We have no weapons, no armor to speak of. They'll swat us like a fly. Our oath doesn't tell us to commit suicide. The boy's right, Lena, Grizz added, his heavy arms crossed over his chest. His expression was grim. I don't like it any more than you do. But my job is to keep this ship and its crew in one piece. I can't do that if we pick a fight with a pack of wolves. They were right. Both of them. Logic, regulations, and the primal instinct for self-preservation all screamed the same thing. Run. Report it to the nearest military outpost and let them handle it. But Lena's gaze was fixed on the holotable, where those few faint pings of life still pulsed, fragile and defiant. They were embers in a blizzard, and the renders were the wind. She thought of the oath she took when she first put on the HRC uniform. The words weren't about heroism or glory. They were about responsibility, about showing up, about being the one person who runs toward the disaster when everyone else is running away. When I was a rookie, she began, her voice low and steady, drawing their attention. My first major call was a station depressurization. A whole habitat ring breached. We got there, and it was chaos. Hundreds of casualties. My training officer, a man named Kai, gave me one order. Find the one. Just find one person you can save. Start there. She looked at Samir, then at Grizz, her eyes holding theirs. We are not soldiers. We will not win a fight. But we are rescuers. And there are people in that wreckage who are alive right now. If we leave, they die. That's a certainty. If we stay, maybe we can find one. Maybe we can be the people who show up. She wasn't giving an order. She was making an appeal, not to their courage, but to their shared identity. She was reminding them of who they were. Samir's nervous energy seemed to still. His fear was still. There, a tremor in his hands, but something else was rising to meet it. A flicker of resolve. Grizz's stony expression softened almost imperceptibly at the edges. He let out a long, slow breath, a sound like gravel settling. It's a damn stupid plan, Grizz rumbled. But he didn't say no. So we're doing this? Samir asked, his voice barely a whisper. We are upholding our oath, Lena corrected. We're going to answer the call. Now let's figure out how to do it without getting ourselves killed. She turned to the holotable, the faint pings of life now looking less like targets and more like promises. Let's go be ghosts. The bridge of the Nightingale transformed from a place of moral debate into a think tank for the impossible. The central, holotable became their drawing board, displaying the debris field in intricate three-dimensional detail. They couldn't fight the renders, so they would have to outsmart them. They're greedy, Lena stated, beginning the impromptu briefing. Their foreman called this a claim. They're here for profit. That's their motivation, and that's their weakness. Agreed. Samir piped up, already calling up schematics of the shattered Cymoran ships. Their technology is beautiful. The ship cores run on a stabilized exotic matter that utilizes trace amounts of rare isotopes. Those isotopes will have a unique energy signature. If I can replicate that signature, you can make a decoy, Lena finished, a spark of hope igniting. Better, Samir said, a ghost of a confident smile touching his lips. I can make 8 of them, my drones. Their primary function is search, but their sensor packages are highly adaptable. I can program them to emit a low-power ghost signal that mimics the energy of an intact high-value ship core. I'll send them to the far side of the debris field. The render's automated scans will flag them as priority salvage. It should, theoretically, draw at least some of them away. Theoretically, Grizz grunted, unimpressed with the word. He pointed a thick finger at the holotable. That still leaves us needing to get through this junk pile. It's a maze, and it's not stable. The render's magnetic grapples are shifting the whole field. One wrong move and a 100-ton piece of wreckage shears us in half. So we make our own path, Lena said, looking at Grizz. Your department. Grizz's eyes lit up with the challenge. He called up the specs for the Nightingale's tractor beam emitters. They were low power, designed for gently nudging aside debris or securing unstable hull plates, not for combat. The emitters don't have the juice to move the big pieces, but the small ones, the asteroids mixed in with the wreckage, I can move those, slowly, quietly. If I can use the larger wrecks as cover, I can shift the smaller debris to create a channel, a hidden corridor, just wide enough for us to slip through. The plan was taking shape. A delicate and dangerous piece of choreography. Samir would be the matador, waving his electronic cape to draw the bulls away. Grizz would be the stagehand, silently rearranging the set for the main performance. That left Lena's role. She activated the ship's medical scanner, pushing its biosign, sensors to their absolute maximum range. The system was designed for pinpointing a single life form inside a crashed shuttle, not for scanning an entire battlefield. The display was noisy, filled with phantom signals and sensor ghosts from the nebula, but with careful calibration she could filter it. There, she said, isolating the cluster of life signs they had seen earlier. They were concentrated in one area, the heavily damaged but still largely intact bridge section of the Symoran flagship. That's our target. The highest probability of multiple survivors in one location. We go there. It's the deepest part of the field, the most protected. A blueprint for a ghost. A plan built not on force but on deception, precision, and a profound understanding of their own limited specialized tools. It was audacious, insane, and utterly human. Samir, program your drones, Lena ordered, her voice crisp and clear. Grizz, start clearing our path. Let's show these vultures what a rescue ship can do. Decoys are away, Samir announced, his voice a low, tense murmur. On his console, 8 tiny icons detached from the Nightingale and sped away on divergent paths, disappearing into the glittering chaos of the Veil of Whispers. Broadcasting ghost signals now, let's see if anyone's greedy. The crew held a collective breath. For a long minute, nothing happened. The 4 render ships continued their methodical, brutal work. Then, one of them, then a second, altered course. Their massive forms turned ponderously towards the far side of the debris field, chasing the phantom promise of a priceless payday. They took the bait, Lena breathed, a wave of relief washing over her. 2 of them. That still leaves 2, Grizz grunted from the pilot's seat. He guided the Nightingale forward, slipping behind a massive, twisted spar of a Symoran vessel that was the size of a city block. Going into the shadow, tractor emitters are active. On the view screen, the scene became a terrifying slow-motion ballet. Grizz was a master. With movements too subtle to be detected by passive sensors, he nudged aside jagged pieces of crystal and rock, clearing a narrow, ever-shifting path. The Nightingale glided through the graveyard like a silent specter, its rescue lights off, its engines running at minimum power. They were a whisper in a field of screams. Render patrol pattern shifting, Samir warned. One of the remaining ships is moving to cover the sector we're entering. He's not onto us, but his patrol route will intersect our position in 5 minutes. We won't need 5 minutes, Lena said, her eyes glued to the bioscanner. The signals, we're getting stronger. Grizz, get us closer, lay us alongside that exposed command deck. Grizz maneuvered the ship with breathtaking skill, bringing them to rest against the shattered hull of the Symoran flagship. The proximity alarms chimed softly, a protest against the dangerous maneuver. We're here, Grizz said. Can't get any closer without scraping the paint. Good enough, Lena said, already moving towards the airlock, a rescue pack slung over her shoulder. Grizz, you're with me. Samir, you have the ship. Keep an eye on that patrol. Give us a shout if he so much as twitches in our direction. Copy, Commander, Samir said, his voice strained. He was alone on the bridge, the ship's only guardian. Lena and Grizz cycled through the airlock, their helmet lights cutting sharp cones through the darkness. The scene outside was one of profound devastation. The flagship's bridge was a spiderweb of cracked crystal, open to the void. They magnetized their boots to the hull and moved towards the breach. Inside, they found them. Huddled within a half-functional, emergency stasis pod were 5 Cymoran beings. They were beautiful, slender creatures made of a living, faintly glowing crystal, their forms chiming with soft, melodic light. Most were inert, their light faded, but one, larger and more ornate than the others, still pulsed with a slow, rhythmic glow. An elder. Got him, Grizz said over their private comm. He began expertly cutting the pod free from its mangled housing with a small handheld plasma torch. Samir, status? Lena asked, her heart pounding. He's coming. Samir's voice crackled in her ear, tight with panic. The patrol. He's deviated. I think he saw the flare from Grizz's torch. He's coming right for us. Grizz, we have to move now. Lena's command was sharp, cutting through the eerie silence of the void. Grizz didn't waste time answering. With a final, precise cut, the stasis pod came free. He expertly maneuvered the bulky container out of the wreckage and began guiding it toward the Nightingale's open cargo bay. It was a delicate operation, like performing surgery in a hurricane. Samir, talk to me, Lena demanded as she helped Grizz secure the pod. He's closing fast, Commander. The render ship, it's less than 5 clicks out. He's hailing us. No audio, just a weapon lock warning. Get us out of here. They scrambled back aboard the Nightingale, sealing the outer airlock just as the ship lurched. Grizz was already back at the helm, pushing the engines far past their recommended limits. The rescue cutter shot away from the Cymoran flagship, diving deeper into the densest part of the debris field. On the view screen, the render ship was a terrifying sight. It was a brute, a flying factory armed with industrial-grade weaponry, and it was now singularly focused on them. This is Foreman Thrax. The harsh voice from before crackled over the speakers, no longer dismissive but filled with cold fury. You are not rescuers. You are thieves. The bioassets you have taken are the property of the Render Collective. Surrender them now, and I will make your end swift. No chance of that, Grizz growled. He threw the Nightingale into a sharp, corkscrewing dive, dodging a colossal spinning piece of crystalline debris. The render ship, less nimble, was forced to blast it out of the way with a mining laser, the explosion sending a shockwave through the field. He's faster in a straight line, but we're more maneuverable, Samir analyzed, his fear now channeled into rapid-fire tactical updates. The debris is our only advantage. He can't follow us through the tightest gaps. But Thrax wasn't trying to follow. He was clearing a path. His ship's lasers flashed again and again, vaporizing obstacles, creating a straight line to his target. He's deploying the primary salvage claw, Samir yelled, a huge, articulated arm, tipped with a multi-pronged grapple the size of their entire ship extended from the render's belly. It lunged for them, its metal fingers opening wide. They were cornered. There was nowhere left to dodge. Grizz, hold her steady, Lena commanded, her mind racing, processing every tool at her disposal. Not weapons, tools. Samir, divert all non-essential power, life support, internal lighting, everything, to the forward emitters. Diverting to what? Samir asked, confused. The cutting laser, Lena said. Grizz's eyes widened in understanding. The primary cutting laser was a massive, power-hungry tool mounted on the ship's nose, designed for slicing through the stationary hulls of derelict capital ships for large-scale rescue operations. It was a surgical instrument, not a cannon. It won't even scratch their armor, Samir protested. Not aiming for the armor, Grizz grunted, his hands steady on the controls as the massive claw filled their view screen. Fire on my mark, Grizz, Lena ordered, her eyes tracking the claw's movement. It was reaching for them, the huge hydraulic joint that controlled its grip now fully exposed. Mark! Grizz slammed his fist down on the activation panel. The Nightingale shuddered as a brilliant, pencil-thin beam of pure energy shot from its nose. It was silent, precise, and utterly devastating. The beam struck not the claw's armored fingers, but the complex, unshielded hydraulic mechanism at its wrist. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a flash of vaporized metal and ruptured fluid lines, the massive joint failed. The colossal claw went limp, its fingers spasming uselessly. The entire arm, now dead weight, swung wildly, forcing the render ship to recoil to avoid colliding with its own broken equipment. That was the opening they needed. Grizz slammed the throttle to maximum, and the Nightingale shot past the disabled claw and into the concealing darkness of the nebula beyond, leaving a furious, crippled, and empty-handed Foreman Thrax in its wake. The journey out of the Veil of Whispers was a quiet, tense affair. The Nightingale was battered, its power reserves dangerously low, but it was intact. The crew moved with the quiet efficiency of exhausted professionals, the adrenaline of the chase slowly giving way to a bone-deep weariness. Their focus was the medical bay. The stasis pod was open now, and Lena, wearing a sterile exosuit, worked tirelessly to stabilize her fragile patients. The Simorans were even more beautiful up close. Their crystalline bodies seemed to absorb and refract the light, and as their life signs grew stronger, they began to emit a soft, harmonious chime, like a chorus of tiny, perfectly tuned bells. Grizz and Samir stood at the medbay's observation window, watching in silent awe. They had seen dozens of species in their line of work, but none like this. It was the Elder who awoke first. Its inner light, a warm, golden color, pulsed with returning strength. It raised a slender, multifaceted hand, and a series of complex, shimmering light patterns emanated from its palm. "It's communicating," Samir whispered, rushing to his console. He activated the universal translator, configuring it to analyze the light-based language. After a moment of processing, the ship's computer began to speak in a soft, synthesized voice. "Your resonance is one of courage," the translation began. "We had thought our song was at its end." "We are from the Humanitas Rescue Corps," Lena replied, speaking slowly towards the ship's internal microphone. "We are here to help. Who are you? What happened to your fleet?" The Elder's light patterns became more complex, faster. "We are the Simoran people. Our fleet was a journey. Our star was dying. We are not a people of many bodies, but of a shared consciousness. Our vessels were not just ships. They were a memory arc. They carried the core patterns, the living consciousnesses of our greatest artists, scientists, and philosophers, the legacy of 1,000,000,000 years." The weight of those words settled on the three humans. They looked at each other, their understanding of the mission shifting seismically. "The attackers, the renders," the Elder continued, its light pulsing with a sorrowful deep blue. "They did not know what we were. They detected the complex energy of the arc and saw only value. They sought to render our souls for profit." Lena, Grizz, and Samir were silent. They hadn't just saved 5 lives from a shipwreck. They had pulled the Library of Alexandria from the fire. They had stolen a civilization's entire cultural heritage back from a gang of scrap metal merchants. They were not just rescuers. They were, entirely by accident, the saviors of a species. Later, after the Simorans were stable and a secure channel had been opened to their nearest colony, the 3 crew members sat on the quiet bridge. The thank you they had received from the Simoran people was a symphony of light and sound, so beautiful it had brought Samir to tears. There would be no medals, no parades. Their actions were unauthorized, a flagrant violation of a dozen HRC protocols. Lena pulled up a blank mission report form on the main screen. The cursor blinked expectantly. "So," Grizz began, breaking the long silence. "How exactly do we phrase this?" "Responded to beacon, encountered hostile salvagers, utilized primary cutting laser to perform an aggressive, non-consensual amputation on an enemy vessel." Samir let out a shaky laugh. "Section 4, subsection B, use of rescue drones for an elaborate and misleading shell game." Lena smiled, a real tired smile. She looked at her crew, her team. They were heroes, but no one would ever know. And it didn't matter. She typed the first line of the report. At 800 Standard Time, Sayar H. Nightingale responded to an automated distress beacon in the Veil of Whispers, Nebula. Her reward wasn't in a commendation. It was in the faint, beautiful chimes that now echoed softly from the medical bay, the quiet, resilient, and enduring song of life. It was more than enough.